learn something new. And I'm today going to introduce the automation bootcamp, the some 5 top business use cases that are the most recent use cases as per my personal experience and working in a lot of projects. So I'm going to discuss about top 5 business use cases that you can automate using Power Automate. All right. So before getting into the session, I would like to give a quick introduction about me. As you all know, like my name is Arpish Srivastava. I'm a Microsoft MVP in the business application stream, and I'm also a Microsoft certified trainer. I'm working as a Power Platform architect in Capgemini, India. I'm also leading the India Dynamics 365 user group. And as Raz mentioned, like I've also been awarded as a Power Community Ambassador for all my contribution to the community. If you want to get in touch with me offline or online after this session, or you want to follow my all the activities, you can get in touch with me. My Twitter handle and my YouTube channel is the Arbit Dynamics. So I post a lot of interesting stuff related to the Dynamic 365, Azure DevOps, and the Power Platform on my YouTube channel. So after this session also, you are going to get all the recordings of my session on the Power Community YouTube channel, also on my channel as well. All right. All right. So let's discuss about the today's agenda. So I'm not going to spend much time on the slide deck. So I'm quickly jumped into the business use case, the live demo of all the use cases. So I'm going to discuss about the top 5 business use cases. The use case number 1 is the portal automation. So there are numerous business requirement, that you get from the client that you need to automate, right? So there are a lot of business use cases I'm going to discuss about that you can automate using Power Automate. The use case number 2 is the Azure AD user management. So in this area also, you get a lot of requirements where you have to manage your Azure Active Directory. So before the Power Automate came into the picture, you had to, perform all the operation manually and sort of all the admin related activities that we used to perform in the Azure Active Directory was quite a hectic process, right? So using the Power Automate, you can manage your Azure Active Directory as well. The third one is the Teams automation. So also, so for example, if I talk about the event management organization like the Power Community that organize almost every week a new event. So it's a quite a hectic process to automate your team's operations, like creating a team, sending the invitations, sending reminders, adding the owners as the organizers, and adding team members. So this is going to be quite a hectic process, right? Quite a manual work. So using Power Automate, how you can automate that, we can also look into that. And use case number 4 is the automate approvals, right? So there are a lot of approval related requirements as well, where you have to approve that, you have to automate your document, you have to automate your contract management, the leave approval process. And nowadays we are talking about the COVID back to office process as well. So there are a lot of organization are adopting, like they are viewing the COVID certificate, and based on that they are giving the approval or the office pass to the employees. So there are a lot of approval process has been introduced in the organization. So I'm going to discuss about that as well. And the last one is the external API integration. So it's not the last, actually there are a lot of other use cases as well, but for this uh, session, I just jot down these four the top 5 use cases. In this, the fifth one, the external API integration, that is one of the most used one. Though we have a lot of other components as well, like Azure Functions, Logic Apps, but I'm just going to use some simple use cases where simply use the Power Automate to interact with some external systems. All right, so these are the 5 use cases I'm going to show you in the live demonstrations. But before getting into the demo, I just wanted to give a brief about what are the requirements or the real-time business use cases that you often seen in your projects, right? So first of all, before getting into the all requirements, I would like to give a brief introduction, like why the Power Automate is actually needed. There were a lot of challenges before this Power Platform was introduced usually, but after this Power Automate has been introduced, there are a lot of advantage we have seen using Power Automate, like expression based low code no code business logic. So as you can understand, you might have working in the Power Automate, so you understand you don't need to write the write the code unless it is really required, or unless it is a complex business logic. You can simply write the power fx, or you can simply write the excel based expression in order to write your business logic or the validations. It provides the seamless integrations with numerous data sources. So that is also one of the advantage of Power Automates, because as you understand, in the earlier days when you had to integrate your Dynamic 365 or the Power Platform with some external system, you had to spend around weeks or months of time to test the particular API, or some REST-based API. But nowadays, if you have to do some quick POC, you just need to test the API. You just want to see how the result is being, getting, and parse. So parsing is also was the major chunk of work in the earlier days. You had to write the code to parse the JSON, parse the XML. So these sort of operations quite easy using the Power Automate. Okay, so it also provides the data sources like Microsoft provided data sources and some non-Microsoft provided data sources. So it also provides the seamless integration with the Microsoft Teams, Office 365, Power Platform component like Canvas app, and your model-driven app. So these sort of integrations are quite easy using Power Automate. Streamline repetitive tasks and the paperless process, especially in the case of retail. There are a lot of the paperless paper and the receipt type of work. You have to generate the receipt, you have to hand over the receipt to the customer, especially in the case of retail, and you have to do a lot of manual repetitive tasks in your daily business use cases, right? So Power Automate actually streamline your automate your business process. You don't need to generate the receipt, you don't need to generate the document. You can simply automate that process, and simply that document and receipt can land on the customer inbox. Best way to create the scheduled job, waiting workflows, and the reminders. So it also provides a lot of, there are a lot of business use case where you have to schedule the job, you have to write the waiting workflows and the reminders. In the earlier days, we had only options was our, the classic workflows, but that was not enough mature to write the waiting workflows and all. It actually used to consume the synchronous processes. So but using Power Automate, you have the opportunities like you can simply write your reminders, like sending birthday reminders, creating waiting workflow. So these sort of requirements you can achieve. Anyone can create it quickly, write, test the business logic. So it's not about that you need to only the developer to write the business logic. Anyone who is even the business person or the functional consultant can directly write the business logic, can simply create a Power Automate to simply create a quick POC and can show it to the client. They don't need a special developer to write the Power Automate. AI capabilities are also there. So there are a lot of AI capabilities. I'm not going to deep dive on that, but it also provides the AI capabilities as well. So nowadays, for example, there are many organizations who are introducing Power Apps portals where they are actually asking their employees to upload their COVID certificates, vaccination reports, and all. So in this case, Power Automate is very helpful to scan the certificate, get the details, and store it into the system. So these kind of capabilities Power Automate provides. Last but not the least, like automate anywhere, anytime. So it actually provides the web versions, mobile version, desktop versions, and the Teams versions as well. So you can access it anywhere and anytime. So these are the advantage of using Power Automate. So if I talk about the use case number one, portal automation. Okay, so there are a lot of business requirement, but based on my experience, I have jotted down four major business requirement that you need to automate in the portal. The first one is the automate portal or Azure AD B2B or B2C authentication. That is one of the most important requirement in the portal, and I have seen a lot of customer, like they already have the customer available in the CRM, and they just want to give the access to the portal, right? In 50 or 60% use cases, your client actually adopt the portal in a very later stage when they understand that how the portal works and why the portal is required. So by that time, you already have all the users or the customer available in the CRM. So how you can automate that process, how you can invite them. So these kind of automation is required. So invitation is a separate thing. So you need to automate your portal invitation process so that you want to give the existing user access to the portal. But there are sometimes, you need to automate your authentication process as well. So I'm giving you a very simple example, like, that at Microsoft also recommend that we have to adopt the Azure AD B2B authentication, B2C authentication, sorry. So local authentication is going to be deprecated. So obviously we have to adopt the Azure AD B2B process. So in case of Azure AD B2B, you have to create the user in the Azure Active Directory as a guest user, right? So as a normal process, the user has to go to the portal, they have to register themselves, and then the user account gets created in the Azure Active Directory. But what happens if you have to automate that process? What happens if you want to automatically create that user in the Active Directory, right? And there might be some business use cases where you need to you need to involve the approval process also in between. So I'm going to demonstrate that. So before giving on a particular before giving the access on a particular portal, you need to introduce the approval process as well. So once the approval is done, then you want to create the user in the Azure AD B2C or Azure AD B2B. Then you want to give the access to the portal. So these kind of automation of authentication in the portal is nowadays a very common requirement that you can do using the Power Automate. Portal invitation process, as you know that, if you have to provide the access to the existing user, then you can use the portal invitation process. The portal invitation process is a manual process, the out of box one. You can automate using workflows as well, but you can use the Power Automate as well. So since the Power Automate is the future, Microsoft also recommend to convert all your workflows or the classic workflows into the Power Automate. So I will also demonstrate that to you, that how you can automate your portal invitation using the Power Automate. Role assignment, that is also one of the important requirement of the portal, that once the user registered on the portal, you have to automatically assign them the roles based on a particular conditions, right? So that they can only have the access of the authorized content on the portal. All right. So these are the some basic requirement on the portal that you always want to automate that. Okay. The second use case is the Azure AD user management. Okay. What are the business use cases where you have to manage your Active Directory users? Okay, so there are various business use cases like create, update, read, delete users in the Active Directory. Like why you need to create your perform the CRUD operation in the Active Directory. There are many business use cases where you have to create the guest users. For specifically, I discussed about in the previous slide for portal Azure AD B2B authentication. You have to create the guest user. Sometimes you want to create it directly through the portal, or sometimes you want to automate using the CRM process. So in that case, you can use the automate, Power Automate. Add Teams owners, add external users to the Microsoft Teams. So sometimes in order to add some external members in the Microsoft Teams, you have to add them as a guest user. Because as you understand that, some external organization user cannot be added as a member to the team. You need to add them as a guest user in the Azure Active Directory. So in that case, if you have to provide the external user access or you want to create them as a member in the Microsoft Teams, you need the Power Automate. Okay, provide Canvas app access to the external user. So as you can understand, like there are many use cases where you have to share your Canvas app with the external users as well, and there is only way available is to create the Azure AD B2B guest user, and you have to provide the Power Apps license, then you can share it with the external user. So if you want to automate that process as well, then you can use the Power Automate. And the last one is to create an admin app to manage user in the AD or Office 365. I have seen many organizations or many business use cases where organization wants to create a dedicated app for the admin department, so that they can simply manage the user throughout the systems. For example, in Active Directory, in Office 365, or in the Dynamics 365. So if you have to automate that process, if you want to create a single app where you can manage all your users in the Active Directory, then in that case, the Power Automate can provide you that flexibility. Another use case is the Teams automations. So there are many business use cases for the Teams automations as well. But if I talk about the if I take the examples of the event management organization like the Power Community. So in the Power Community, we organize a lot of events every week. We have to finalize the organizers. We have to finalize the speakers, the participants. So there are a lot of users are there, we have to manage, right? And we have to manage the security as well, so that the documents, the files, or some of the content should not be go to the unauthorized users, right? So there are many business use cases where you have to automate your team's creation, you have to send the team's invitation, you have to create the team's owner. So for example, one day before any of the participants is registered through the portal, but they didn't get the Microsoft Teams invite for that particular event. So you can simply introduce a chatbot, you can simply introduce a Power Virtual Agent, and there is no need to to set up a user, or to set up an agent, or the customer setup agent to provide the Teams URL to that particular user. You can simply automate that process. The Power Automate can simply get the Teams URL from the dynamic CRM and send it to the particular user. So that is the way how you can simply automate your process, your creation of teams, sending teams invitations, adding teams owner, adding teams member. Or there are many business use cases where you have to see uh, the 360-degree view of all the emails, whether they are Dynamic 365 emails or the Outlook 360 Outlook emails or the appointments. Because as you can understand, like all the emails or the appointments of Outlook does not get synced in the dynamic CRM unless we manually track them. So if you have such requirement that you need to have a common view where you can see your all the personal emails or your appointments along with your business email and appointments, then you can use the Power Automate as well. You can simply create a Canvas app where you can pull it from all the emails from the Outlook. So these kind of automation you can also do it from the Power Automate. Approval automation. So the use case number 4 is the approval automation, and there are a lot of business requirement for that. So if I talk about the contract approval, there are many business use cases where you have to approve the contracts. You need to use the DocuSign also, so that when you need to get the signature of multiple authorities or higher management in order to before sending the contracts, especially in case of retail process or the sales process, or in order to automate your documents, you use the Power Automate. Financial approvals, billing approvals, leave approvals, payroll approvals. So there are a lot of approval processes are there. Microsoft has also approved, Microsoft and EY. So these kind of companies are using Power Automate. So I think in the latest case study I have seen, like EY is adopting Power Automate to approve their payroll cycle. So the which employee will get what sort of salary or these kind of things. They actually implemented the Power Automate to approve or to automate the payroll process. Timesheet approval, employee travel request, interview approvals. So when you're taking your interview, or you have to generate an app where you need multiple approvals. So these kind of process you can use the Power Automate. COVID back to office approvals. So in case of COVID, there are a lot of organizations are adopting the process. They ask employee to upload the vaccine certificate. They ask employee to upload their vaccine certification reports, and based on that you have to take the decisions, and you have to provide the office passes to the employee. So these kind of requirement you can use the Power Automate. Overtime requests, session approvals. So for example, in the Power community, like if you are submitting your sessions and someone needs to approve your session before you can deliver it to the event day, then definitely you can use the Power Automate. So we have the UI approval that I'm going to demonstrate it soon, that how you can use the UI approval in the Power Automate to approve to fit your all the requirements where you need the approvals. The last use case is the external API authentication, and I think this is one of the most common requirement nowadays, that you have to integrate your Dynamic 365 or Power Platform with some external APIs, right? So there are many business use cases for that, and there are a lot of ways nowadays to do that. Like recently, Microsoft introduced the custom pages as well. So in the earlier days, we used to use the Canvas app. We used to embed the Canvas app if we had to, show some external system data. So if you have to display some external system data, or if you have to, provide the 360-degree view, and you want to perform the operation in some external database, then you can also use display data in the Canvas app or in the custom pages. So there are numerous business use cases. So for example, if you're working in the Dynamics 365, and you have to integrate your system with some external applications, right? And in the external application, you have to perform some operation, you have to view the data, you have to perform the some operation in the data. Then what was the usual process in the earlier days? The CRM user had to leave the CRM screen, they had to switch to another screen, and they had to perform operation there. But nowadays you have the capabilities of the custom pages. You can bring the data from the external system and show it in the dynamic 365 screen. So you don't need to back and forth switch the screens from one tab to another tab, and you don't need to switch the systems as well. All right. So external API integrations is also one of the most common requirement. So I'm going to show in the live demo that how you can use the external API integration using Power Automate. All right. All right, so let's jump into the live demo. Like whatever use cases I have discussed over here, I'm going to quickly show it to you that how we can utilize that. So first of all, the first use case that I discussed about, let me quickly get that. OK, so portal automation. Portal automation, I'm going to show you how the portal invitation process works. So there are a lot of business use cases are there. I'm due to lack of time, I cannot demonstrate everything, but I'm going to show you how the portal invitation process works. So you know, understand the if you know or have the basic understanding of the portals. Portal has a process. Portal has basically two types of authentication or the way to access the portal. One is normal way the user come to the portal. So if I open my portal, so there are two ways to access the portal. Any user has to come to the click on the sign in page. They need to register and they can simply provide their user ID password details and they can simply register on the portal. But second way is that if you want to restrict user that because there might be the situation like you are exposing your portal or public facing website and you don't want that everyone can register on the portal. OK, you want to give the portal access to a specific group of users only. So what you can do is you can simply remove this registration options using site settings and you just want to allow them using the redeem invitation option. So user will get the invitation or sort of verification email and they need to click on that particular link. That link will generate the invitation code and then they need to register on the portal. OK, so redeem invitation process is basically also useful to link your existing user to the portal. Right. So as I was discussing about, so if I open my model driven app, so let's say if I open my portal. So if you can see here in the contacts, I already have a contact available here. OK, and this might be also a situation in other organization as well that you have already configured your CRM. You're working for 1 or 2 years and your customer has already been set up. But later on you realize that you have to set up the portal as well. OK, then how you can give them the access. OK, so the portal invitation is basically a process that actually provide the access to the existing users as well. OK, so the normal process is that you have to open the portal contact. OK, you have to go to the create invitation option. Once you click the create invitation, it generates the invitation. OK, you have to choose the invited contact to whom you are going to send the portal invitation. You can simply choose the type like there is a single user you want to invite or the group of user you want to invite. So that is also an option. You generate a link for the portal invitation and how long it's going to be active. So that depends on the expiry date. So you can set your expiry date as well. And after that expiry date, the portal invitation link will no longer accessible to the customer. OK, and once I save this, once I save the invitation record, it actually generates an invitation code for me. OK. So if you can see here, if I go to the advanced tab, there is a invitation code that is, you can say it as a verification code. So it generates a verification code for me and it actually send it to the customer so that this verification code is basically used to link your invited contact with your contact record. So this is the invited contact and it actually links with the contact record. So in that case, when the user gets the invitation URL, when they registered through that URL, they don't need to create a new user. The contacts doesn't get created in that case. It automatically linked with the existing contact. All right. Okay, so how I automated this process, because right now if you have seen, like, this is the manual one, you have to create the invitation, then you have to send the invitation and all. So let me go to the solution that I have created. Okay. All right, so this is the send portal invitation. I have created a Power Automate. If I go to the edit mode. Okay, so if you can see in this Power Automate, what I'm going to do is when a row is added or the modified. So what logic I have written here when a particular record is getting updated. So what I've done is I have created a boolean field over here, send portal invite. So if the admin or maybe who have the access who want to invite the portal contact, existing contact, they will simply turn on this flag and save this record. So it's up to you that how you want to automate that process. You can simply create a button on the toolbar as well. So I've just created a flag. So as soon as I turn on this flag, this Power Automate will trigger, and as soon as the Power Automate gets triggered, I have just provided an approval step as well. All right. So in the approval step, this is also very helpful. I'm also going to discuss about this approval in another Power Automate as well. But this is also a very helpful step. Like, this is an UI approval feature of the Power Automate. So in the create an approval, you just need to provide some details. So there are multiple types of approvals are there. We have the if you have a requirement to approve by the multiple user, then you have the option to everyone must approve. So once everyone approve a particular request, then only the process will begin. Okay. We have the approval reject first to respond option. So if you have the requirement that you need to approve with only one user, single user, then you need to use the first to respond. Custom responses, and these are other options are also there. So I just want to get the approval from the single user. So I'm just using the first to respond option. OK, the title that you want to provide, like I have just given the title like review portal invitation sent to I'm dynamically pulling up the name of the user. OK, and just giving some sample name. I have just provided the hard coded value that who is going to approve this, but you can take this as a dynamic value as well. So you can simply provide the approval email also here, and you can just take out that value from that particular field, and you can send it to for the approval. But just for the demonstration purpose, I just provided assigned to field, and you also have the option to add the multiple assignee here by separated by the comma separated form. If you have if you want to approve it from the multiple users, and you have to provide the details over here, and I have simply provided some dynamic value here. OK, and the last step is the wait for approval, where you have to provide the approval ID. So these are the two steps are mandatory in order to send an approval request to a particular user. OK, so this actually send an approval in the Microsoft Teams and in the Outlook both. So it's up to the user from where he or she wants to approve the particular request. All right. And in the condition, I'm checking once the approval is done, what is the outcome of the approval? So there are basically two outcome, approve or reject. So if the outcome is approved, then I'm simply create an invitation of the portal and sending that invite to the particular user. OK, so for creating an invitation, what I was doing here as a manual process, I'm just automating this process. So I'm just creating a record, the type as a single, the name as a full name, and obviously the invited contact. So contact I'm getting from this step from where the Power Automate got triggered. So these all the information I'm dynamically pulling it from the previous steps. And then final one is once this steps gets executed, this create invitation steps, I will get the invitation code as an output. So what I'm doing is I'm sending an invitation, and in the sending invitation, I'm just sending the invitation code in the email body. All right. Or simply if the request gets rejected, then you can simply write your business logic for the reject case as well. But just for the demonstration purpose, I'm just using the approval case only. All right. OK, so let me turn on this flag and save this record and see how the Power Automate business logic works. OK, let me go back. Send portal invite. So status is currently running. Let me open it. All right. So the Power Automate got triggered. It has created the approval as well. It's waiting for the approval. OK, so the approval has been sent to the arpit@powercommunity.com. OK, so first let me open the email. So if you can see here, I got the request. OK, so here I got the request review portal invitation sent to Arpit. And I can, you can see here all the data has been auto populated dynamically. OK, date created, year of with, and everything has been auto populated. I can approve directly. I can reject as well by providing the comment. And the another option, if I go to the Teams, I got the notification here. So it's up to the user, both the flexibilities are there. If they are working on the Microsoft Teams, they can review the request here also. So if you can see here, I got the approval request and all the information got auto populated. And right now, the request is pending with me only. Otherwise, if you have the multiple approval option was there, then you could see the multiple approval option as well. So I just simply provide the comment approved and approve it. All right. As soon as I approve it, if I go back to my Power Automate, this get turned into green and the condition got satisfied, like my outcome is true. The create invitation steps got executed. And the main thing is that whether our invitation code got generated or not. So if I go to the show more, if you can see here, there is invitation code got generated. And I just need to send this invitation code along with my portal URL. So if I go down in the send portal invite step, if you can see here, this is my portal URL and the invitation code got generated dynamically. And immediately I got the email as well. So let me go to the email. So if you can see here, I got the email. Dear Opit, please find the PowerGuide self-service portal URL. Please click on the link to register on the portal. So if I hit on this link, if you can see here, invitation code has been generated automatically. OK, so I'm not going to register to complete the process. You can simply register on this particular button. And if you can see here, my email ID is automatically auto populated, right? That was there in the CRM right now. So once I provide my username, password and confirm password and hit register, that user will automatically get synced with the existing user, right? So with this contact record. So if you can see here, this email ID has got automatically auto populated over here. So this is the way how you can simply invite your existing existing contact to the portal using portal invitation process. All right, let me go to the second use case, the Azure AD user management. OK, so in the case of Azure AD user management, there are two ways. Let me go to the solution again. OK, so in the Azure AD management, I have also created a new Power Automate for that. That is create create guest user. OK, let me edit this. So since we already have a Azure AD connector, right? So in the Azure AD connector, you have the provision to create the Active Directory members, not the guest user. So in order to create the guest user in the Active Directory, especially in the case of B2B or the B2C process, for the Canvas app external user authentication or the portal external or the user authentications, you sometimes need to create the B2B or B2C users. So that privilege we for that purpose we have to use the Graph API. All right. So in order to create the guest user in the Active Directory, so if I go back to my Active Directory. All right, so this is my Active Directory. If I go here, users. So there are some sample users. So if I search my users, so there are two types of users in the Active Directory. You already aware about that. Like one is the member and one is the guest user. So member is the actual Active Directory users who require the license, right? And this one is the guest user that is actually required for the Azure AD B2C, B2B authentications, especially in case of portals and the Canvas app. OK, so I'm going to create the guest user over here. So there are numerous business use cases I've already discussed in the PowerPoint. that why you need to create the guest user. But here we understand that how we need to create the guest user. Okay, so in order to create the guest user, we first need the Graph API. Now, whoever don't know about the Graph API, Graph API is basically a REST-based API provided by the Microsoft that lets you interact with some other Microsoft application. Okay, so if you have to perform some operation in the OneDrive, Microsoft Teams, Azure Active Directory, SharePoint, so excuse me. So if you have to perform the operation in some other Microsoft applications, in that case, the Microsoft Graph API is very useful. Now, in order to call that Microsoft Graph API, there are two major things that you have to remember. The first thing is the Graph Explorer. So Graph Explorer is basically a way where you can simply test your Graph APIs. Okay, so there are numerous operations are already provided in the left panel. So if you can see here, so for example, to get my profile, to get my photo, to get my emails, and some operations specifically related to the users, like to get the user by email, to get the users with the name, to get the the count of the guest users. So these kind of operations you already have, like security related operations, Outlook related operations. So there are a lot of operations that you can perform using Graph API. So if you have to test your API simply like a postman, you have the option like you can simply choose the type of operation. You can simply the version type of Microsoft Graph API. And here you need to provide the URL of the API. OK, and how you get this URL, how you get to know that what should be the version and what should be the method. You can simply take the help of Google. So for example, if you have to create a guest user in Active Directory, of API, so you will get to see all the details about that. So if you can open this article. So for example, if I have to create a user, what permission I need to have? So you already get this information from here that for delegated work or school account, you need to have this permission, and for the application level, you have to need these permissions. What sort of URL you have to use? So you have to use the post operation. You have to use the user. What should be the header, the authorization? You need the token and you need the content type of application JSON. What should be the request body? You need to provide this, and you get the example as well that what should be the URL, what should be the header information, what should be the method, and what should be the request body. OK, so if you're not aware that what should be the format of it, you can simply copy it from here and just paste it in the Graph Explorer. And if you have any error in terms of permission, so for example, if you don't have sufficient privilege, so for example, if you don't have these privileges in the Active Directory, and if you try to directly use this operation, you will get directly the error message over here that you don't have this privilege, so that you can directly go in your Active Directory and configure these permissions, right? So maybe in the Power Automate, you will not get that deep dive level of error information that what privilege you are missing. But maybe using this Graph Explorer, you will get to see all the detailed information, detailed error messages as well. So before using this Graph API in your Power Automate or in your custom C# code, I would recommend to test this API in the Graph Explorer that whether you are getting the response properly or not. All right. So this is the way you should think about this Graph Explorer. Now, in order to call that Graph API, there are some prerequisites are there. So the first prerequisite is there that you need to register a particular app. OK, so here I've already registered an app, Microsoft Teams auth. I have already created an app, and inside this app, you need to capture few details like specifically the client ID. You can generate the secret key. The second thing is that the secret key. So this actually works as a username and password. So basically, you need to get the client ID, then secret key, and the second thing is that you need to perform the permission. You need to add some permissions over here. So for example, if I have to create the users, right? So I need to have these permissions. So how can I add these permissions? I can go here, click and add permission. Since I'm using the Graph Explorer, so we'll Graph API, so we'll click on this. Now I have two options, delegated and application. So in the delegated, I have to provide these all permissions. So click here, delegated permissions. And under the users, I have to provide under the directory, I have to provide all these options, privileges. And under the users, if you can go to the users, okay, so in the user, you have to provide this operation. So what it depends actually what sort of operation you are going to perform using Graph API, and based on that you have to configure all this API permission. Once you're done with that, you have to hit the grant admin consent. OK, so by just adding the API permission, it is not enough. You have to grant admin consent as well. OK, so these are the prerequisites. Once you are done with all the prerequisites, you need to capture the client ID. You need to capture the secret key. OK, and the third thing is that you need to capture your tenant ID as well. So if you go to the your Active Directory, click on overview, and you can simply get the tenant ID as well. You can simply go to the overview and you can get the tenant ID as well. So this is the way you can simply get this information. Now we are good to go. Now if I go to my Power Automate, where it was here. So in the Power Automate, if you can see here, I captured three details: client ID, secret key, and the tenant ID. OK, so I simply initialize a variable just to store that. You can simply pass it dynamically, so directly pass in the request as well, but I just kept it in a variable, and I'm just providing an email ID that the user that I want to add in the Active Directory as a guest user. All right. So let's say I'm just providing a sample email ID over here, and I just want to add this guest user in my Active Directory. So this is the major step which actually lets you create the user in the Active Directory, create users. OK, so you have to use the post method. You have to provide this URL. OK, so you will get this URL from the Google, that what URL you have to use to create the guest user. OK, you have to provide the content type and then the body. In the body, you can see all the attributes I have provided over here, that what information I want to create or add while creating a guest user. The main important thing is the invited user type. OK, because we are creating a guest user, not the member. So I just kept the user type as a guest user. And another thing is that send invitation message. Sometimes when you have to create the Azure B2B users, B2C users, you have to send the invitation as well. OK, same like the portal invitation. If you have the requirement that while creating the user in the Active Directory, you want to send the portal, you want to send the invitation to the user that we have added your account in our Active Directory, you can simply start accessing the application. OK, so in that way, you can simply send the invitation message as well. But right now I'm not adding that. I'm just simply set it to false, and that's it. If I save this and test this flow. So currently I've just kept this flow as a manual one, but you can simply trigger it from the from the from the Power Apps, from the Dynamics 365, from anywhere else, from the Microsoft Teams as well. So it depends upon the your business requirement. So when I run this flow, I should all the steps gets created, and I just need to copy this to find this user in my Active Directory. OK. If I go here, if I go to the users, if I search this user, if you can see here, the user has been created as a guest user. So for this demonstration purpose, I have just uses the current this create operation. But if you have the requirement, you can simply use the update, delete, or other retrieve operation as well. So before creating a user in the Active Directory, you want to check them that whether this email ID user is already present or not. OK, so for that purpose, you can simply use the retrieve Graph API call as well. So then if the user is present, then skip that. If the user is not present, then create that. So these kind of operation you can perform. Let's move into the third part, like Teams automation. In the Teams automation, let me go to the another Power Automate. OK, so in the Teams automation, I have created two Power Automate, create Microsoft Teams and add member to the Microsoft Teams. OK, so if I open the create Microsoft Teams, go to the edit. So here I'm not going to use the Microsoft Graph API because we already have the Teams connector available that allow us to perform all the operations. So in the earlier version of Power Automate, we didn't had the Teams connector, but still there are few operations that is not possible using the out-of-box Teams connectors, like update your Teams meetings or update your calendar invite. So for that purpose, you still need to use the Graph API. So Graph API is a very solid thing that sometimes what your out-of-box connector doesn't do, that it actually provides that capabilities. So what here I'm doing is it actually creating a team. OK, so if I have to create a new team, I just need to provide the name of the team and some sort of description that what should be the description or the agenda of this particular team. Add a member to the team. So here what I'm going to do is I'm actually adding a owner of this team. So just make sure like the team's owner can only be the Active Directory member, not the guest user. All right. So as I already shown you, like in the Active Directory, we have two types of users. One is the guest and one is the member, right? So if I try to if I try to add the guest user as a team owner, that is not possible. So you have to use the member, the Active Directory member who has the valid Active Directory license. Then these user can only be the owner of the Microsoft Teams. The guest user can only be the member, but the restriction is that they should be there as a guest user in the Active Directory. OK, if the user is not there in your guest list or in Active Directory, they cannot be added as a member. All right. So while I'm creating this Microsoft Teams, I just provided the ID of the user. OK, so this is the user the ID of this my member user ID. And here the option like you want to create this as a owner. So yes, I want to create this as a owner. Let me change this a bit because we already have the meeting with this name. So mission submit 2022. And then I'm just using this create teams meeting as well. So as soon as the teams gets created, I'm also creating a teams meeting invite as well. OK, so just for the testing purpose, I have provided some sample values like a start time, end time. OK, so let me change it to 18 and this change it. Oh, let me change it this to 24. Okay, so if you are writing, if you are creating a Canvas app of some other sort of mechanism, then you can simply dynamically get this value. You can simply provide the subject and just providing the subject, description, message, everything, and the required attendees. So here also I have just provided the hard coded values for the required attendees, but you can get it from the dynamic CRM, from the SharePoint, from the OneDrive, from anywhere you can get this value as a dynamic. Okay. Let me run this to see how that works. Now, how you can automate this process as well. So for example, simply as soon as the organizer create a particular event, OK, through the portal or through in the CRM, there automatically a Teams gets created with the Teams meeting. OK, now you can simply provide a Microsoft Forms or the portal forms to the customer facing website. So if any participant or any speaker gets registered, they will automatically add as a member in the Microsoft Teams. So I'll come to that part later. So you can see here a new teams should get created. So if I go to the teams, here, if you can see here a new teams got created, Arpit Automation Summit. And if I go to manage team, you can see here, you can see my name as a owner as a list. OK, now what I want to do is I just want to show the calendar as well, whether the teams got meeting got created. So if you can see here, a teams invite also got created. OK, so with two attendees over here and all the information Microsoft Teams invite. So two things already been done. Now what I want to do is in this Teams, I want to add an external member. OK, so if you can see here, this Arpit or CRM consultant is a guest user. OK, I want to add this user as a member. So what I want to do is if I go back to my Power Automate, okay, I open the add member to Microsoft Teams. Edit this. All right. So here what I'm going to do is here I'm just checking. I'm getting all the teams and apply to each. I'm just checking the condition that if the team's name is Arpit Automation Summit 2022, then add that particular team member. So this is the guest user team member in the Microsoft Teams. And obviously I cannot set this to yes because it's a guest member. So simply save this and test it. All right. Okay. So it's actually checking because 16 teams are there. So all right. So the teams has this flow has been done. Let me go to the teams. If I go to the with automation, manage teams. So it's a guest user. So sometimes it actually takes time. Maybe sometimes it takes 5 to 10 minutes of time to add the user. So let me check it again. So it's still not added. So let's wait for some time because it's a guest user. So it usually takes 5 to 10 minutes of time to add as a member. All right. So let's get back to our another use case like automate approvals. So I'm not going to discuss about automate approval specifically because I've already discussed in the portal automation process that how your automate approval works. So just give a very high level idea. If I go to the solution, session approval. So I'll just quickly go through that how it actually created. But I have already discussed in the portal automation that how the approval works. So you need to create the two-step basically. Create an approval where you just need to provide simply the type of the approval title assigned to, and here you can provide the descriptions. If you have some sort of item link or the record or some sort of URL that you want that the approval should view that information, you can simply provide that URL as well. And the last is the waiting for an approval. So it will actually wait for your approval and unless the approval assign that particular record. OK, and you can simply based on the outcome, you can perform your business logic. So this is the way how you can automate that process. Whether it's a document automation, it's a contract automation, any type of automation could be there. OK, let's discuss about our last point like external API integration. Like so for the external API integration, there are numerous business use cases are there, but just for the demonstration purpose, what I've done is I've just created a simple custom page. OK, so nowadays Microsoft has recently introduced a custom page that provides the more flexibility as compared to the embedded Canvas app. So custom page can also be embedded on the main page where you see the dashboard as a landing page. You can also open the custom page as a dialog box in the left panel, in the right panel, or as a in the center dialog box. So what I've done is I've just simply created a page called view exchange rate. OK, this view exchange rate is basically a custom page that actually display the list of all the exchange rates. OK, so if I simply open this, so what I'm doing is I'm simply calling an external API that actually retrieve the exchange rate from the external system and get the response in the JSON format and just bind it to the custom page. And I'm just embedding this custom page to the Dynamics 365. So if you can see here, I've just designed a very simple, custom page. The custom page is very similar like the Canvas app, but it provides some more flexibility in terms of the responsiveness and in terms of the UI capabilities. All right. So if you can see here, I just provided these values, these controls. OK. Now, if I go to my power, so this is the basic custom page I have created. If I go back and check the flow that I'm using to call that external API. So if you can see here, there is a flow that I've created called get exchange rate. That actually calling an external API. So I'm just calling it through the power within the custom page. So I've just triggered as a power apps. And this is my simple HTTP request. And this is the API URL. And there are some queries information that this is the access key that I'm using to call that API. and these are the symbols that I'm using that for which currency I just want to get the exchange rate. So I just filtering out that I want to get the exchange rate of these only currencies. Okay. And there is no sort of authentication. It's a API key based authentication I'm using just for the demonstration purpose. So this is just an HTTP request, and I'm sending this JSON response in the form of response connector. Okay, so whatever response I'm getting in this HTTP request, I'm just sending it as a JSON. And in my custom page, I'm just storing this, you know, I'm just storing this JSON in the collection. So if you are aware about the collection, it actually is a temporary storage in the Canvas app or maybe in the custom pages that actually hold your data unless your app is not closed. OK, so if I simply preview this and if I run this button, click on this button, it actually fetch the data from the external API. OK, and if I go here and go to the collection, in the collection, if you can see here, it actually store the data in the collection. So in the rates, if you can see here, all the rates has been auto populated here. OK, now what I've done is I've just embedded this canvas, so this custom page in my model driven app. So let's quickly go back to my app and open this model driven app. And in the model driven app, in the left panel, I have just provided this view exchange rate option. OK, and if you can see here, I can see the external API data. So you can simply understand that how seamless integration it is. I can simply get the data from the external system and embed it into my model driven app using the Power Automate. Or if you want to push back the data from my system to the external system, so that is also quite possible. You can perform the operation in external system as well. And the beauty is that you can embed these custom pages in your, in your landing page where your dashboard appears, right? So as you can see, like currently I have not followed the best practices in terms of the UI responsiveness and the font sizes and everything, because this is for the demonstration purpose. So you can simply, follow the Microsoft guidelines to match your UI responsiveness and the font size, family, everything with the Microsoft, what Microsoft has already given on the pages. OK, so this is the way how you can embed your custom pages. You can embed this page in your form as well in your, for example, if you want to show it on the click of button, so you can open in the dialog box. If you are, or you can open in the right panel, left panel. So this is the way how you can embed that. So these are all the top 5 business use cases that I have collected based on my experience. So you can simply, if you have any sort of other requirement that you want to discuss with me, I'm happy to help you and I'm happy to discuss with you offline as well. All right. So thanks a lot for being with me. And if you have any questions, please do ask me. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Arpit. So we've come towards the end of your session time now. There are a few questions, but those questions are actually highly related to the next session as well. So I advise anyone who has questions, feel free to add them in the chat. We could add them from the chat, or they may be answered as part of the next session anyway. So Arpit, would you like to share your contact details if you haven't already done so, your blog, Twitter, LinkedIn, so that people can keep in touch with you?
Sure, I'll do that in a while. Yep.
Excellent. You've got excellent feedback, Arpit. Your sessions are always fantastic. Thanks again. And for everyone, just to remind you all, we do have a hackathon next month. So feel free to visit powercommunity.com and you can register for the hackathon there. And we will see you, Arpit, next month. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks. Thank you. Have a great day. Bye-bye.